Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Field, and I've got with me today a new team member, new co-host, new at everything, really. He's just starting his journey out. He's been on before. We've kind of introduced him a little bit here, but Dr. Eder Garavito. So, Eder, tell us a little bit about your academic journey and how it's led you to where you're at as a business owner now.
So honestly, my academic journey didn't really do much for me in terms of leading me towards being a business owner. But what happened was that, in my younger years, especially in junior high and high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I felt all the pressure of my colleagues, my classmates going to college. They want to be this, they want to be that. I'm like, I don't really have anything that I really like to do. But internally, I always thought to myself, I don't know why, or I didn't know why and I didn't know what, but I was like, I would love to own a business someday. And to be honest, like I think that came from, you watch TV and there's like these CEOs with this nice suits and all the money in the cars. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And lo and behold, making a long story short, I ended up going to physical therapy school to become a clinician instead. And everything went well. But when I graduated PT school, I already knew at that moment I didn't want to be in clinical practice forever. I wanted to transition to academia, which is where I am now. And now, since I've been teaching for about just shy of 5 years, the opportunity to assess the landscape and the needs of my students was right in front of me. And as I've been doing my PhD in education and learning all about pedagogy and learning theories and such, I started just kind of putting all these puzzle pieces together and then kind of dug deep back into, I want to own a business and I would love to be an entrepreneur, but I also want to make sure that I don't just go for like a hardware store. I want to make sure that if I leave clinical practice like I did, and if I leave academia, as I may in the future, I want to make sure that the company that I build still gives back to the healthcare landscape. And so here we are. But honestly, aside from the dollar signs and the people with nice things, which eventually I didn't care so much about the material stuff, I just always knew internally I wanted to have something of my own.
So you and I share a lot in common, from learning styles and struggles we've had and business ownership, right? I'd like to kind of just dive right into the nuts and bolts of today's show and really kind of talk about because it's interesting that you say that your academic journey didn't lead you into business ownership, but I think it's really your why behind the business that kind of did get you there. And so let's talk first about mentorship, right? Let's kind of just give me a rough idea and vision and definition of mentorship. Let's start there.
Sure. And honestly, I don't think anybody can give you that definition that's really concise because that's the problem. We haven't been able to define it in our landscape. But to me, honestly, mentorship is having somebody who has gone through specific experiences that maybe you want to go through, that they've, treaded the deep waters, they've done the ebbs and flows that can guide you and support you through whatever journey you need at that moment, whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, what have you, right? The issue that I've been having that I'm trying to like break apart as we try to define mentorship is convincing people that there's a difference between having a mentor. Like Scott, you've been a mentor to me. And at the end of the day, you have absolutely no grasp over my future. Meaning you can't fail me, you can't pass me, you can't take money away from me. You don't have any of those abilities. So my relationship with you or my mentors that I've had that have guided me and supported me have had pretty much no like, hierarchy in some way. So when we talk about mentorship, in my perspective, you have somebody that can guide you, that can support you, that shares ideas and morals, everything like your own, but also that there's not a power dynamic so that you can be open with them, that you can be completely truthful and they can help you because sometimes we hold back information because we're afraid of being, seen as, I don't know, like small or unintelligent or lazy. And of course, when it comes to educators, and that's a little bit different because we can we have to hold their grades. So a student's probably not going to come to me as a mentee, in my opinion, and I'm probably not going to mentor them, again, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, they're not going to tell me everything because I have a whole other grade. Now, that's not saying that I'm going to change it, but that power dynamic is always going to be there.
Yeah, that so a couple takeaways from that, right? One, mentorship kind of is what you make of it, right? Everybody's mentorship or ideal and view on mentorship is going to be different. It's going to be personal to them, right? And the power dynamic is a major aspect of that, right? Like you, if you're looking for a mentor, if you're looking to get mentorship, yeah, finding somebody who doesn't have any sort of power dynamic, and is more just a shepherd or a guide that can give you valuable insights and outsider point of views on things is a great starting point, right? Because there's people out there who are doing what you want to do or have done what you want to do, and they're willing to share their time, their effort, their knowledge with you. That's a pretty good start for mentorship, right? That's a pretty good jumping off point, I would say.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. For any Star Wars fans out there, think of, good old Luke Skywalker. He had a lot of guides along the way, right? And those guides helped him get to a point where he was finally successful in whichever way you want to look at it. So I think the issue from what you just commented, which is completely accurate, is where do we find these people? How do I find these people, right? And we talk about it right now like it's such an easy feat, but at the end of the day, when somebody listens to this and they might be like, well, okay, so like, where do I find these people? Do I just go to the yellow pages? So that also is not a defined process. And at the end of the day, for the most part, it ends up being just something by chance. I knew somebody that knew somebody that told me that they might be good for me. Or I ran into somebody and they gave me their card because I talked to them about what have you. So why leave those things to chance is kind of really my perspective, but there's not been yet a really good method to get somebody that you just can connect with without having that stress of having to find them.
Yeah, so that's a good lead into my next question then. You've started a business, right? Scholarnetics 360. It involves mentorship. So you're starting to craft the process and make it a little bit more reliable, a little bit more defined, right? Tell us about like that process. How does one even go about starting to find a mentor?
Like in Scholarnetics 360
In general, yeah.
in general.
However
Yeah,
you have this vision of what it should look like and how that's turned into the business.
sure. So the thing is, I didn't really have a vision of what that looked like, and for me, it was just by chance. But also, generations are changing, right? And in my generation, cold emails and cold calls were still moderately acceptable for those who are introverts. So I did those things. My motto is just, there's nothing wrong with asking. The worst that can happen is somebody will say no. I cannot. So that's how I sought mentors and people that I connected with when I was in PT school and even when I graduated. But a lot of people in this new generation, upcoming generation, don't like to do that. Perhaps even the COVID pandemic made them introverts. They're afraid to, uh, be declined as if like their marriage broke up because somebody said, "I'm sorry, I don't have time for you." There's all these fears and barriers, but at the end of the day, everybody needs a mentor. It doesn't matter where you're at in life and what your career is. The problem is that for many of us, like myself, especially in early career, like new grad, first 5 years, what have you, I did not know that I needed a mentor until I had one. And that's where most people are. They don't know they need one until they have one. And like, oh my gosh, like where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know, right? And so it's a little bit of they call it naivete or blind spot there, but it's like again, we keep talking about this over the last several months, but the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where it's like
Right.
you're good to go and you know everything, and then all of a sudden you get into it and you're like, oh wow, I don't know anything, and you crash back down and start at the bottom again. And then you realize that like, hey, I'm on this journey, I need to start learning. I've taken whatever entry level stuff I need. How do I now progress and get better and speed up my timeline and my process? And that's where I think a mentor comes in, right? Like I'm a huge fan of like paid mentorship because it speeds up my timeline. It helps me avoid a lot of the little rookie mistakes and early mishaps that I've made along the way because I can learn from people who are already doing it, right? And again, mentorship comes in many different forms, right? And for many different things, right? You can be a mentor for clinical work, you can be a mentor for business, you can be a mentor for education, you can you can be a mentor for spiritual journeys, right? There's mentors for everything out there. And it really is a little bit of an inward process of figuring out what it is you need and then how to go out there and find those resources to fill those voids. And I think social media has actually done a little bit of a good job bringing us closer together and making it more accessible, right? Like the whole world, I can have a mentor across the world because I can talk to him on the internet, right? On Zoom, on via email, on social media, whatever it may be. So I think the access is has gotten a little better and a little easier. I think we're still kind of trying to figure out and fumble through the clarity on who, what, when, where, why, how, right? Like we're trying to get the process down a little bit more. So speak to me a little bit about, how Scholarnetics 360 works and what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Mentorship at the end of the day is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? It's nothing new. But to your point, it's like if your listener, when your listeners listen to this, and we just take like a 5-second pause, think about what mentorship means to them, like what mentorship means to you. And I think many will say something like, "Oh, there's something that can help me." Sure, but to your point, in which capacity, right? Mentorship is what you make it. So this is how Scholarnetics 360 works. Our goal when we built the platform, the company, was really to develop a way to connect healthcare students and professionals with top experts around the country. Okay, whether you're a learner, whether you're a professional, in whichever part of your journey in your career, we all need some guidance. Mentorship aside, which is kind of a subset, we need help, we need guidance. And so the way that it works is in our platform, think of a dating site is kind of what we're building. So I can hop on there and just type an inquiry like, want some more help understanding the value of going into a residency program, or I want, I'm having difficulty understanding the connection between neuroanatomy and the presentation in Parkinson's disease. Or it can be as superficial but very, very important to somebody as I would want to speak to a Black female therapist that's part of the LGBTQIA community. Now, if they're part of our mentor pool, that's what you get, right? You get matched with, you get a top match, and then you can pick out of the first 10 matches. You can view their profile, their experience, their badges, their research, their CV. And you know what? At the end of the day, I think commitment is a huge issue for many people. So what we've built is the ability for a free chat. Look, your picture looks like the person I want to talk to because they look like me. Let's just go that route. Your experience is something that I'm really interested in. Wow, you have a great CV. Let me just ping you for a chat. And then we can chat. I can tell you what I need. You can tell me a little bit about yourself. And let's see if our values, our views, our perspectives align before I commit as a mentee to, hey, yeah, let's hop on a video conference. And if we get to that point, then between the mentor and the mentee, it can be at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. It's based on their schedule, their availability. They schedule a video call, and the video calls are all private. They're one-on-one. They're nobody's recording them except for QI. And at the end of the day, we're not using Zoom. We're not using another platform. It's all built within our system and it's all encrypted. So you don't have to go anywhere else. You just click, log in, and then it just opens a Zoom-like call where you can then now interact with the mentor. And after the call's done, you can still communicate through chat. You can still schedule more sessions if you like. But you know what? At the end of the day, maybe they just didn't like each other. Maybe it was a unidirectional, like, I don't know if we're matching. Maybe it was bidirectional. That happens in real life. We get assigned mentors when we graduate oftentimes, and they're not assigned based on whether they're going to be a good fit. Many times they're assigned based on the need, the availability, and that mentorship experience may be positive or negative. If it's a negative one, what do? You can't really, I shouldn't say you can, but it's not very common that we complain to our supervisors like they're not being a good mentor. But with our system, if you just don't hit it off, it's okay. Like, Scott, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate talking to you. And maybe we'll connect again sometime soon. And then I just move on to somebody else and try somebody else to see if they fit what I'm looking for better. Or what if I outgrow you as a mentee, Scott? And then you're like, you know what, Eder, like, man, I think that like you're just there. You know more than I do now. So you need to move on to somebody that knows more about X, Y, and Z. And I couldn't really do that in real life by just walking to somebody else without having a resource where now I can say like, yeah, I need help with this, and then I get matched with other people and move on.
Yeah, there's so many good takeaways there, right? I mean, first you're not trying to get married and have kids on the first date, right? Like
No.
you got to get to know people. You got to see if you have that match, right? You jive and like, yeah, there's reason to continue on with this or like, man, that wasn't really a great match. Like we're moving on, right? So I love that aspect. And like you said, the bigger picture is like eventually, yes, you can outgrow a mentor, right? And it's fine, right? New levels bring new devils, right? Every time you level up and learn something and implement it, you have success, and then you're going to hit another road bump and another issue, right? And that mentor may not be the person to get you past the next one because they've never dealt with that or whatever, right? And that's fine. So finding the right fit at the right time for the right level and the right issues, to me that makes a whole lot of sense because it's seamless. Both parties understand what's going on, right? And there's clarity around that. So I guess then my next question becomes like, what advice would you give to people looking for a good mentor? Like, what makes a good fit? What makes it seem like, yeah, this is someone who jives in what I'm looking for in a mentor?
Yeah, again, we can go in circles around this one, but if you're asking for just my opinion, at the end of the day, when you're looking at a mentor-mentee, let's call it relationship or even session, whatever you want to call it, unless it's asked for, the mentor should not be doing most of the talking. The mentee needs to come prepared with what their needs are, right? And the mentor shouldn't really be giving all the answers. It's just helping them critically think through these problems and processes, perhaps giving some examples, listening actively all the time, and making sure that they address what the mentee needs. But at the end of the day, these relationships, whether they're virtual or in real life, mentees are in the driving seat, in the driver's seat. Like they got to come with something. Like, what do you need from me, right? So a good mentor is somebody who is going to not just perhaps let's talk about Scholarnetics 360 accept and say, yeah, I can't wait to meet you. A good mentor will say something like, hey, we got our time scheduled, when it's next week at 3 p.m. Central, whatever. Make sure you come prepared with these things so that we can make sure that our session is going to be beneficial and fruitful for what you need. That way they don't just show up as like, well, what do you want to talk about? Well, I thought you were going to help me. You're going to help me with my critical thinking. Well, yes, but what about it is troubling you? So a mentor is going to challenge the mentee. They're going to be open-minded, and they're going to be somebody who's just going to actively listen, absorb, and not just try to take that mentee and mold them into who they are as a mentor, as a person. They're going to help them become their own person by giving examples and by helping them critically think through things and ultimately help them become their own person, but not try to mold them into this is how I did things, this is how why I'm successful. Should that be the case? And you should do those things too. Nobody's going to take the same path or road. We all have our own.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, man, because it again, it goes back to the personalization and the customization, right? And like you have to take responsibility for your outcomes, your path, your journey, right? You're just kind of getting help along the way, And then, again, like a lot of the coaching that I do, same thing. I put myself in the passenger seat, man. I'm just here for the ride. I'm shepherd. I'm guiding you, right? I'm giving you some GPS directions. I'm playing with the radio and getting us some good tunes. But you're driving this thing, man. You're steering it because at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for you and your ideas and business and outcomes and learning and whatever it may be, right? So I love the fact that we're starting to recognize that mentorship is a tool or a resource to push yourself forward, right? Because we're all on a journey. We should all be striving towards mastery. In order to do that, we have to gain expertise and authority along the way. What better way to do that than to learn from the people that are doing that, right? To learn from other experts and authorities, especially in the field, if you can get real specialized and really whittle it down to somebody who's kind of been there, done that. What are some of the like red flags or things to run away from or things that you would say like, oh, well, that's not a good fit?
Yeah, somebody, I mean, the first thing to me would be somebody who doesn't actively listen and they spend the whole time or most of the time talking to me about whatever, right? Like we mentioned, mentees should be in the driver's seat. I want somebody who's going to listen. And whenever I say, like, what do you think? They'll turn back with, like, well, let's talk about what you think first, right? And then I'll give you my opinion later, or I'll help guide you, like you mentioned. I'm just playing the tunes here, brother. Like, do you like this music or don't you? That's one of the major things. And then I think, somebody who's available enough for your own individual needs. And that doesn't mean that a bad mentor isn't available, but some people are busier than others. So if you as a mentee have more needs than somebody else and they're not able to meet them, it doesn't matter if you look like you have similar interests, you both like to go fly fishing. Who cares? At the end of the day, you might have to find just somebody else that can help you in that moment, in that season of your life, until you're just in a better place that you maybe not don't need as much guidance. But ultimately, I think the biggest red flag is if anybody were to listen to a mentorship session, it would be, to me, when a mentor is speaking in a way where they're trying to really mold that individual into who the mentor is because they deem themselves successful subjectively or objectively, instead of allowing them to drive down their own road and create their own path.
Yeah, I definitely made that mistake early on in my business career when I was trying to show people how I was doing it, right? And I was like, just do what I did here, just do the thing, right? Not realizing that like A, my mind works differently, right? And B, not everybody wants to juggle 8 balls at once, right? I love that. Like I love multiple things. I love working on a bunch of projects, right? But like for some people that was overwhelming and that was too much, right? When I realized, oh, that's not what I'm here for. They need to be doing their thing. Tell me the way they want to do it and show me where their expertise lies. And then I can guide them from there and give them inputs on that one thing that they want to do. And once I started realizing that and recognizing that and helping people that way, the results got even better and better and better because they were, taking that responsibility and they were getting radical clarity around what they needed and how I could help.
Right. And there's like no mentorship manual, right? So
No.
what was your turning point when you realized that what you were doing wasn't as helpful as it should be?
Well, luckily, a couple of my early students or clients were phenomenal, right? And have gone on to outpace me now, right? And so luckily they were able to kind of handle and weather the storm, right? But one of them was like, how do you do all this stuff? Like, that's insane. Like, they kind of called me out on it, right? And I was like, huh, that's interesting because I don't find it insane. But when I look at other people and their schedule and their tolerance and their, what they can do and handle, it is insane, right? Like if you're talking about doing these 8 different things for a single mom of two who has just enough time to do like a side business, seeing a couple patients versus, start the podcast, write the book, create the courses, do all the things, that's not going to work, right? You have to meet people where they're at. And that really was eye opening to me when they said that. And I was like, oh, you're totally right in certain situations, in most situations probably, yeah, this is insane, this is not normal thinking and won't work for everybody, and so that's when I really started to reevaluate the process and really helped people turn it more inward and figure out what worked for them and what their passion was, and then bring that the best of them out of themselves and then apply it to what they wanted to do. And that really changed my way of coaching and thinking and helping people, because just do it the way I did it is not the answer.
Right, right.
You know,
And as somebody who coached or coaches and mentors, I mean, you're somebody who loves to give back. You love to share your knowledge, your experiences. And that is, in my opinion, there's no value to that, which is just some of the difficulties we're having right now with pricing. Later story. But to that point, right? I mean, as you're mentoring, you develop this vision, even inadvertently, even if you're the best mentor, for what success looks like for your mentee. This is where I want you to get. And that's a big thing, right? Like, what's the ending point? We're going to meet whatever time you need, however times we can. What is the ending point? And at the end of the day, I think a mentor that's growing like you did in that moment, you have to step back and realize that your vision of success for that person is not their vision of success. So we have to understand like what their vision of success looks like and then steer in that direction, because I'm like you, man. I have like 18 things going on, and if I don't, I'm bored. But my wife, who does not operate this way, she's like, I have no idea how you're doing all this, right? And I don't know, I just do on a daily basis, and I just do. But then I come back and feel like, of course, I'm not mentoring my wife. Then I come back and analyze that and reflect. I'm like, how do I do all that stuff? I have no idea, but it doesn't bother me. It's how I operate, right? So my vision of success might not be the same for my wife than it would be her own vision of success. And we have to accept that as a mentor.
Yeah, that's one of the first questions I ask now is, what would a successful outcome look like for you? Because in my mind, I know what a successful outcome would be for me, but that's not everybody, right? Like, and even my vision of what success is, like, I'm not trying to run a seven-figure business with 50 employees, right? That's not in my wheelhouse. It's not what I want to do, right? So somebody might want to do that, and I could get them to a point and then be like, "Hey, you're on your own at this point, man. I got to find you someone else because I'm not at that level that you're trying to get to, and I'm not going to be able to get you there. So let's find the person that can, right?" What would you say? So let's turn it now on us, right? And let's look at the mentor side of things now, right? What would you say are some characteristics that you've seen over the years in really good mentors?
Yeah, man. I mean, somebody who is, again, an active listener, which I've already said that I think 5 times, but at the end of the day, somebody who is humble. It doesn't matter how many accolades, how much experience they have, because at the end of the day, that humbleness will help ensure that they are looking at the vision of their mentee success and not their own, because they're completely different, right? And somebody who is vulnerable, because if you have a mentor who is, has tons of experience in whichever capacity, years of this and that, but at the end of the day they have difficulty separating their pride and their ego from what success looks for the other person, it's going to be really difficult to grow for them, because you'll probably feel as a mentee that you're never good enough for them because you're not where they're at. And I think somebody who can just say, like, I'm this is, like you mentioned, this is what my success looks like. Let's understand what your success looks like, and I'm going to help you get there, right? So that's that, like, flexibility, active listening, and just being able to kind of change. But also somebody like you just said, man, and I think this doesn't happen too often, or often enough, I should say, somebody that can say, you know what, I'm no longer good for you, you need somebody better. And it's tough, man. Like, I mean, you have worked so hard in your career, and many of your listeners have and are still doing so. So it's tough to say, like, you know what, like, I've been helping you for months or a year, and you're better than me now. So let's find you somebody that can help you more.
Yeah, I think that's a little ego check, right? You've got to be, but like I love to see that. And that I think was luckily innate in me that like I love to see my clients go out and succeed, right? I just love to see that. I love, when the student has outgrown the teacher, so to speak, right? Like I love seeing that because then I know I probably had a little part in that at least, like I helped out to some extent, right? So I think, it's one of those things where you definitely have to put the ego aside, but some people can do that and some people can't. And so I think that kind of helps decide, are you going to be a good mentor or not?
Right. And not everybody's a good mentor. And not everybody, look, let's be real here. Even in higher education, not everybody who has all the publications in the world and all the experience is a good educator. It's the same thing. Not everybody who has something like that is going to be the greatest mentor. So putting ego aside sometimes is tough, but perhaps what we can try to just help mentors who want to become good mentors, who want to become good mentors with, is not some, of course, they have to, like, understand their mentee's vision of success and not compare to them, their own. But instead of, like, thinking about what is my vision for success for my mentee, I think maybe they should focus more on what is my vision for success in this mentorship relationship. Do I want them to outgrow me? Do I want them to teach me? Do I want them to, whatever it might be, right? So, like, if I'm mentoring you, what is the success for that? So for me, one of the last individuals that I mentored, my vision of success for that person was different than theirs, but ultimately my vision for our successful mentorship relationship was that they would pass the NPT on try one. And when they did so, I was happy. They're going a different path, and the things that we talked about, the things that I value more, and I shouldn't say more differently, but that's their vision of success. My vision of the success of that relationship was, you told me what your ultimate goal is. Let's help you get there. And it wasn't just like, let's review anatomy. Sure, we did some of that, but it was, come with questions. What's bothering you? Like, what are the things that you just cannot grasp? And let's make sure that we close those knowledge gaps, because you're going to need them for your MPT. But these weren't academic review sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's now in hindsight, I can look back on my struggles with the NPTE, right? But there's so much more that goes into it than just the content, right? Knowing the anatomy and the stuff that you have to know to pass the test, right? Because I knew the stuff. It was more about like emotional management and stress management and preparation and exercise and hydration and health and all the things that go into a successful outcome, not just like sitting here and studying, right? Like, and
Yeah.
it took me a while to get to that point, right? I realize now, in hindsight, after much reflection, that those were things I needed along the way and wasn't addressing. So that's when I finally was able to pass, was when I started addressing those things, right? So it's more than just like you said, showing up and studying, you know. And I
Yeah,
think
man.
a
And
mentor
we should.
can find that, you know, they can see those things.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to say we can save NPTE talk for another time because we can go around in circles on that one. But to your point, I think which is very valid, is yeah, somebody can and will pass by just sitting and studying a review book or studying their notes. It happens, but it happens because they're good test takers, right? And ultimately, not to digress, because we will go down a rabbit hole. So now it's 225 instead of 250 questions, but still, nonetheless, like it's a game of endurance. Can I have or do I have enough mental endurance to answer 225 written questions that ensure that because I did so, I can have my license to practice? So it's wild. But instead, like, let's say they get the license to practice. So what happens then? It goes back to what you mentioned in the beginning of the show. It's like they are sometimes, I'm like, for me, it literally happened. This is not even an exaggeration. I didn't have my license yet, but I was studying for my exam. And so I was sort of like hired on as, I mean, I had my salary, but it was like, you can't touch patients until you have your license. My license came in on a Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. I brought it to work and I got 3 patients that day. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, man. Like, I got my license, I'm treating patients, I'm signing notes with my name. That name is worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But at the end of the day, like so many people like myself, it's hard to admit that once we graduate, we get that license because it's literally like the biggest climactic event of PT school. It isn't practicals, it isn't, skills checks, it isn't your rotations. It's I got my license, right? But then it's like, what the hell do I do? Like, what am I supposed to do? Or I saw 3 patients in a 10-hour day, man. Like, talk about enough inefficiency. I don't know how to document. I don't know this EMR that well. Like, I joke around this about this with my students, and I purposely teach them these things. But man, I didn't know what a nurse practitioner did. I didn't even know physician assistants existed. It wasn't part of my education. So I'm in this big level 1 trauma hospital with all these people, and people are talking this language. I'm like, I have no idea, but I'm just shaking my head, nodding, and yeah, I got you. Man, if I would have had a guide at that point that would just like help me just digest everything and help me become more comfortable, more confident in my approach to interdisciplinary conversations, to approaching my patients, to feeling more comfortable in my clinical skills in those first 5 years of practice. Oh man, like it would have been incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest here, right? The NPTE, passing that and getting your license, that's almost just like the bus ticket to get on to start your journey. You know, like you're just beginning at that point. Like you went through this whole big thing, you passed the test, and now you're just getting started. Like it just happens to be for real now. It's the real life, trials and tribulations and ups and downs, right? So it's quite a roller coaster, but at the same time, yeah, the more help and guidance you can get from anywhere, right? Like the better you're going to be because you have that support and that, for me, I went into travel therapy right out of the gate, right? I didn't have much mentorship. And that's one of the things that I see a lot of times is that places often say they have mentorship or they have a mentorship program, and really they don't, you know?
It's more like training, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, that's one thing I always recommend when students are interviewing for jobs, that they see like some form of written out plan for mentorship if they say they have it, because inevitably, like having one of your coworkers help train you a little bit, and then eventually it gets too busy and they have to do their thing, and then it falls by the wayside, right? As opposed to like a structured, built-in mentorship, right? Like that's night and day. That's a totally different world. So you have to make sure that what you're promised is what you're getting, and that's where, being able to navigate a good mentorship relationship becomes invaluable, I think.
It's so invaluable, right? And I mean, here's the deal too, right? Students graduate. I remember, I could change so many things when I graduated, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't. And I wasn't. I actually like PT school. I shouldn't say actually, but I enjoyed PT school. I enjoyed my faculty. There are some students that don't. They're just in there to get in and out, and that's fine. It doesn't matter if they like us or not, if they like the program or not. When they get their license, they're on their own. They don't have us to rely on. Even if they don't like us, they can pretend they like us for a question, and they have so many unknowns. How do I do this? How do I do that? And travel therapy, man. A lot of people say don't go into travel therapy when you graduate. That's bogus. Do it, but you got to be a special type of person that is very self-sufficient because you are in so many unknowns over and over and over and over again, right? But what about like the places that need us as clinicians the most? Our rural areas, our knowledge deserts, our all those places where if I graduate today and I have my license tomorrow, now I might be one of two therapists there treating patients. And the therapist that I had that is there, maybe I don't get along with, or maybe we work different, opposite shifts. Who do I call, man? Batman's not the option here.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, self-awareness was a big part of my decision to go into travel therapy. I felt confident enough in my skills that I was going to figure it out, right? Luckily, the first three places I went kind of gave me some training, so that was good. But when it came down to it, like I felt a little bit alone on my own little island at times, and that's when I would go outside of the current staff or people there that were there to help or whatever. I didn't want to burden them per se. I didn't want, I could go to my manager, I could go to the person that trained me, but I reached out to people that I met along my clinical rotations and my journey, and I would just ask like, "Hey man, how you doing? Like, just got this quick question. What do you think about this?" And they would give me responses. And that's one of the cool things I think about healthcare specifically is we do like helping, we do like sharing our knowledge and being there for people, like we have very servant based hearts. So I think it's important to realize that mentorship is out there, right? But part of it is you've got to go out and seek it. You've got to do the work, the legwork, and that circles back around to just having that responsibility and having, owning your own path and journey and finding the resources and tools you need to succeed. And hopefully mentorship is a part of that, but there's books, there's studies, there's plenty of stuff out there. It's knowing what you need and when you need it and being self-aware enough to diagnose that and then figure out how to get it.
Yeah, man. And I mean, this is not to say mentorship is the only answer to that by any means. Not to sound cliche with the movie quote here, but you have a very unique set of skills taken, right? Where you were traveling and doing, that in your early career, you're an extroverted person. Man, you and I can have conversations for hours, but a lot of people are not extroverted. So if they're shy, if they don't have the skills, the even the confidence to just start talking to people randomly. My wife always says like, you can talk to a door and make it talk back. I'm like, oh, that's just my normal life. And she's an introvert. So if you put her and I in this hypothetical competition of who can get the most mentors, in 10 hours, she would get nobody, pro girl, sometimes probably because she's not an extrovert. I'd be talking to everybody. And that's not a skill that everybody has, right? And sometimes we need to hide behind a screen. We need to have our sunglasses on, right? And that is why we offer what we're offering. Just start on your computer, man. But at the end of the day, I think something that would have been cool too is having the ability at that moment in your life to connect with somebody to not make you feel so alone. Because mentorship again isn't like let me help you become a professional, let me help you become successful. It's like, look, I'm having a really hard time. Like I feel inadequate. I feel like I'm not good enough. I'm traveling and like I'm just sitting in all these different types of places. And they can help relate or they can just be a listen to an ear to listen, right? So it's just that's the problem that we're ha- that I that we're having as a company is how can we package this term mentorship and say that it's worth it to you because it comes in so many different flavors and varieties, right? And at the end of the day, like you and I have said, it's mentorship is what you make of it, and a lot of people don't understand that oh, if I get a mentor, it's going to be whatever I need. First, it's my time and I'm paying. Well, if it's a paid mentorship. And second, like, I mean, I found somebody that hopefully matches my vision of success that they can help me get there. But I have to be the one that's going to be reaching out, asking the questions, asking for help. Because at the end of the day, sure, a good mentor might be like, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't heard from you in a week." But it should be also the opposite, like reaching out whenever you need people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that takeaway, man. Well, Eder, so obviously, we've asked all of our guests this final question. I kind of know your take on it, but I'd love to hear, has it changed and adapted over the time or not? But if you could change one aspect of any, higher education, whether it be DPT or otherwise, what aspect would you change and how would you change it?
Yeah, and I have answered that question before. And at the time when I answered the question, you and I haven't really been talking about my company very much, and I just didn't want it to be a conflict of interest. But my answer to that question when you asked it to me was access, right? And access to make things more affordable because, again, I don't want to get paid any less money than I do for my work, but it's outrageous how much students pay. But let's stay with that term. We need more access, right? And so access comes, yeah, if it's in more inexpensive, if it's virtual education, if it's flexible, all those things that we're trying to do. But this is why we're doing what we're doing, because at the end of the day, what I realized, Scott, was that I have 11 and a half years of experience. I'm board certified in cardiovascular and pulmonary PT, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. My colleagues are out there in the front lines treating patients daily. I see patients maybe every 6, 7 weeks. So when I'm teaching my students CVP content, my knowledge has limits. So why not have something besides YouTube that my students can have access to, those people that are working out there every day and literally can be like, "Hey, is Dr. Garavito telling me the truth? Is this really happening out there?" Help them connect that theoretical knowledge to clinical application that we can't do oftentimes just by, let's look at your classmate, let's work on a written case study. So that's another form of access. Like, skip me if you need to. And but if you skip me, don't just go to YouTube, like skip me and go to a valid and valuable source. And so, with what we're doing and hoping that students will eventually start using more, is that, look,
Yeah.
I've been learning all these things, but I'm just having trouble really kind of putting things together. Like, can you tell, like, what are y'all doing out there? How does this work? What is a patient presentation like? And that's just another form of access to the people that are doing these things on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I like it too because it's access, it's opportunity, but like you said, it's also kind of vetted, right? Because you have to go to the right resources, right? Social media isn't going to be the answer for everything, and YouTube University has its flaws. So I mean, you do the best you can, but you really have to know who and what you're going to when it comes to resources if you're going to go that route. So it's nice to be able to rely on trusted resources as well. Well, Eder, thank you so much for your time and for coming on here to share your story with us. Tell us a little bit about where people can find out more about Scholarnetics 360 and learn all about you and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, whereas and at Scholarnetics 360 on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Scholarnetics 360 or scholarnetics.com, don't matter, redirect you. That's where they can find us. But at the end of the day, right now, we're doing our open beta testing and it's free. So if anybody wants to join and test it and help us build let's go back to the mentorship thing. We built something that we think the users want, but now in our beta testing, we are wanting users to come on and tell us what they want because my vision for what they want might be different, right? And so we're running a free beta testing right now. So hop on, try it out. You have nothing to lose. I mean, it's literally free. Connect with people and let us know if you hate it, if you love it, what features you want built. And that way we can get to a point where we can launch it fully and open for everybody.
Awesome. We'll drop all those links in the show notes so it's easy for everyone to find. Eder, looking forward to hearing more about your journey, man, as it progresses.
Always appreciate you, Scott.